Hello. This is my first live stream, in case it's not obvious. And I thought this would be a good way to get used to speaking in front of the camera and sharing about number knitting with you. And we'll see if anyone shows up. Thanks to my friend DJ, who suggested that 1,000 people might show up. So shout out to DJ. Yeah, so I started, I learned about this book when I was in college, and it's my very favorite knitting book, and it's very hard to come by. It was only printed in one edition, and it was her only knitting book, and so it was never reprinted, and it's just sort of like lost to history. I think Elizabeth Zimmerman was a very early fan of this, and she actually was able to obtain her own copy back in the 70s, right around the time that the copyright protection on it expired. And I know some people have asked me, like, how can you, because I'm working to republish this, and I hired a copyright lawyer on a couple of different occasions to give me the kind of the lowdown on the legality of me republishing this, because it is in the public domain. And once the book has entered the public domain, then it can be, redistributed. And so I actually hired the U.S. Copyright Office. This is probably like 5 years ago. And for paying them for 2 hours of research time, they will research any book that you want to see if it's in the public domain and if the copyright has been transferred, and they'll do all that research. And for the cost of $400, they were able to do all that research, and they sent me the official documentation that says this is in the public domain. So I took some time, and I scanned the entire book on my old flatbed scanner. And I do technical publishing for a living, and so I don't know about you, but like whenever I get PDFs that like don't have optical character recognition, and they don't have bookmarks, and like they're not clickable, I just get irked. Like, okay, we have so much technology at our fingertips. It's like, why would a publisher or someone producing PDFs not do that? And so I took the time. Oh, it looks like I've got 2 guests. I can't see who they are because I don't know how to do live streams yet. But anyway, if you want to say hi, pop a note in the comments so I can see who you are. Oh, there's 4 people. Oh my gosh. Thanks for coming. Anyway, so I scanned the entire book, and I ran optical character recognition on it, and I like added bookmarks, and I extracted all the photos, and I colorized them. So like if it says, the sweater is in copper color, then I actually colored it copper, and I like put all the colorized photos actually in the PDF. And as I was doing all of that, it became very, very apparent to me why this book was never republished. Like if you look, of course, I don't have any examples here. If you look at a lot of older knitting books, like if you have an old copy of like the Mary Thomas knitting book, you can see that there's nice big wide borders. And so it was a fairly straightforward process for a publisher to like republish it. But if you look at the number knitting book, the whole idea of this is based on graph paper, and that graph paper goes all the way to the edge, and sometimes so do the charts. And so it makes it very, very difficult, very time consuming to redo all this. And that chart's not too difficult to see, but like because the whole thing was done in like a grayscale, like the differentiation in the grid lines versus the actual chart itself, it's really hard to see. And so one of the things I did was to redraw, like a year redrawing all the charts in Illustrator. And that was very, very time consuming. But I made all the grid lines like a very, like you have with normal graph paper. It's like a very light cyan, and all the actual instructions were like the cast on and the bind off and that sort of thing. Did those in black, and I did the actual units themselves in black. So I added a lot to it. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, like what is number knitting, and like why this book is so, I think most people don't even know like why it's so foundational. Hello, ACR Project. And hey, Karen, I just now saw the chat pod. Again, I'm new at this. So what makes this book so interesting is that the author had grown up when, she was provided like really strict instructions, like you have to get so many stitches per inch. And sorry, my door was opening by itself. You had to get, hey, DJ, you had to get so many stitches per inch, and it was just like very, very regimented. And, a lot of patterns require that. And a lot of knitters like that. They like the strictness of it. Like you have to get 6.5 stitches to the inch, not 6.25 or 6.75, but like 6.5 stitches to the inch. And it's like it's rigid. And Bellamy, let's see where Bellamy is. This is Virginia. She didn't like that rigidity. And frankly, neither do I. And so she figured out a way to like freestyle it. And so she started with just like with garter stitch and a square, and wanted to see like what would happen if she did, a square and then a rectangle and a triangle, and different shapes of bisected square, which we call a mitered square. And so she did all kind of experimenting. And I think at least as far as I have found in my knitting research, Bellamy was the first knitter that documented the whole idea of garter stitch, having an equal number of ridges. Ridges are, the horizontal lines, and an equal number of stitches. So, so many stitches, like 60 stitches wide by 60 ridges, which is like 120. Those numbers will give you a square. And honestly, if you have a 60 by 60 or 12 by 12 or whatever square of garter stitch, it's usually like a little taller. But the beauty of what she discovered is when you take those units and you put them at like opposing angles, they will even out the tension. It's beautiful. And she documented that whole concept. And I know a lot of people are under the understanding, which is totally fine, that Elizabeth Zimmerman did. But Bellamy's work was like, I think Bellamy was like an early, she published this book in, I think, 52. She talks about working on it even like during the Depression. So she was, probably like a knitter in the, the 1920s, raising her kids in the 30s and the 40s and so on. And so she was a little bit earlier than Zimmerman. But as far as like when they were in their knitting careers, they were kind of contemporaries. But obviously, Elizabeth went like way further. She didn't just do one and done for her book. She continued with, the yarn sales and the pattern publishing. And like, I think she picked up where Virginia left off, as far as the designs that she came up with, like Baby Surprise and, the Nautilus hat and the Tomton, and like all of Elizabeth's, famous patterns. And there's, a lot of them. And I feel like was continuing on in this, but some of her, I do know that she was, I think she even in her, sometime in the 70s, I think it was, in her newsletter that she put out called, I should know this. I should know the name of her newsletter. Wool Gathering. In her Wool Gathering newsletter, she talked about how she was trying to obtain a copy of this book, because it's not like she had Amazon. Like you can't just like go call your local bookseller and like get one of these things. And so she kept going to the library to check the book out. And then she finally was like, well, I have a newsletter like with knitters around the world. Like, why not just ask people if they have one that I could buy? And somebody did. So that's how Elizabeth got her copy. And so I do know that those concepts that Bellamy put forth were carried on through Elizabeth Zimmerman. And But because Elizabeth, she didn't just do that, dark garter stitch. This is all garter stitch. That's it. I mean, sometimes at the bottom of the sweater, it'll say, work 2 inches of ribbing. And like, that's it. But like Elizabeth, she did the Scandinavian stuff. She did a whole bunch of different kinds of things, like, Knitter's Almanac has got like tons of stuff in there. It's not just garter stitch. Some of it is, but some of it isn't. But this is exclusively garter stitch. And so I think that's probably the biggest difference between this and what Elizabeth did. And so once Bellamy produced this, that was it. She was done. I mean, she got a patent on it in 48, which is great. And probably, I think I've had someone tell me that that's probably the reason the book didn't get more press and more coverage, because if you look at the very beginning, I'm on like the front section of the book. It says, the method and the products produced by this method described in this book are covered by a U.S. patent number, blah, blah, blah. The patent has been registered with the U.S. Patent Office as available for license. The publishers will be glad to forward to the author any requests for permission to teach number knitting professionally. Address requests to Department NK, Crown Publishers, Inc., New York, New York. And so the fact that she took the time to get this patented, I think it ultimately hindered what, like how far the book could go, because like you can't, like if you go to any yarn shop now, you can, teach, they do workshops like, oh, what's the hot thing this year? Oh, the half and half wrap knit along, or, half and half wrap, class, or like whatever the latest, coolest shawl pattern is. And the yarn shops will teach a course on that. They'll sell you the yarn, they'll facilitate you getting the pattern, and you can, buy the pattern sort of like through Ravelry or something. I'm not sure. But so the yarn shops facilitate the instruction of, certain methods and techniques by specific designers. And I just don't think that wasn't happening in the 50s. Anyway, so if you've never heard of this, and most knitters haven't, I think a lot of maybe like knitting historian types, they've probably heard of it, maybe. I'm not sure. But like the deeper you go into garter stitch, the rabbit hole will eventually take you back to this book. And yeah, so anyway, I've been working on trying to republish it for, it's going on like 8 years now. So I'm a little slow, but I got to, I scanned the whole thing. I told you I ran optical character recognition on it. So I copied and pasted all of the text, which is no joke. This is 200 and I think it's 274 pages long. Yeah, it's 274 pages long. It's a ridiculous amount of text. And then I redrew all of the charts. And while I was doing this, I went into the Ravelry database. And I don't know if any of you have ever like put a pattern in Ravelry, like if you've ever done that, or if you've just bought patterns. But you can actually not upload, but like you can add a pattern to the database. And so you can, put a picture of it. You can say who the designer was, like what yarns were used, the needle size, and then like the little, excerpt or extract or whatever. Like for here, this is jacket and cap for a tiny baby yarn. It says 1 ounce of any baby yarn will make both the jacket and cap. 2 ounces will make and later enlarge the jacket or cap. Needles. She always includes, well, not always. Sometimes she does like needles separate from gauge. It's not really consistent. It says to knit 4 stitches to 1 inch, numbers 10, 11, or 12. And so then it tells you like what the chart is. And that's something interesting that Bellamy did, is each one of these little boxes on the graph paper that represents a certain number of stitches. And so if this is like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, 6 times 4, so it'd be like a 24 by 24 mitered square. So I put all those details into Ravelry for every single pattern. I didn't like upload the newly created charts, because that'd be like giving it away. But I put all of like the excerpt part like the intro part, I put that all up into Ravelry. And there's 74 patterns in this book. So like, I don't know, take out one of your favorite knitting books and see how many patterns there are. Like I know Knitter's Almanac because it's a, it's a compact little book. I think it's got 12, which is great, one for every month of the year, but this is 74. And that's like, that's a lot of patterns to put into Ravelry, but they're all there now. And so if any of you were knitting any of the patterns from the book, you could tag them in there as well. I scanned in, when I was scanning the book, I took all the pictures and like some of them I couldn't color. I was like, this one is, I didn't colorize that one or this one, but like I would take those pictures and extract them and put them also into the Ravelry database so that people could at least have an idea of what these things look like. Yeah, so that's it's been a long road, and I honestly thought this thing was going to take me like a year, but here we are, like 8 years later, and the reason, I think the main reason I haven't gotten further, for one thing, I have like a separate business that actually pays my bills. Number knitting is for fun, but like my business got really quite busy, and so that kind of like I couldn't spend 20 hours a week on number knitting anymore. But I had things that paid me money. But another thing that was challenging is figuring out how to represent these patterns in a way that modern knitters are accustomed to. So like blankets aren't too difficult, but sweaters are more challenging because there's fit involved. Okay, here's a good one. This one is called Seamless Suit for Either Sex. So it's like shirt and pants for a toddler. Well, this looks pretty straightforward. It's got some instructions about the, what yarn to use, and then you follow the chart here. But then when you get into the pants, check that out. Like, what in the world? She invented like a new method of charting, and it requires because her way of knitting, it requires a lot of needle changes. And so one of her biggest influences was Mary Thomas, who published her knitting book, Mary Thomas Book of Knitting, I think in the 20s, maybe 1928. I'm not entirely sure. She's got a couple, but that was the one that that's the one that Bellamy referenced specifically in the foreword of her book. And there's a couple pages in there where Mary Thomas mentions if you adjust one needle size up or down, it will give you the equivalent of adjusting your gauge by about a half a stitch per inch. And she said you should, knit a big piece of knitting, 12 stitches wide or 20 stitches wide or whatever, and then go from like, start with a size 4 and then go to a size 5 and a size 6 and a 7 and 8 all the way up. So you can see, not change stitch count, you can see just by changing needle size, like what your fabric is going to do. And Bellamy latched onto that, and she used that idea in her charting. Like it's very boxy. This is a sweater. And, but you can see that it's not boxy shaped. It's got a lot of, it's just different shaped. And so there's a lot of gauge shifting going on. Like here it says units 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 are all in divided squares using paler blue and knitted on larger needles, number 12. But units 3, 5, 7, 18, 19, 20 are all adapted divided squares and knitted in darker blue on smaller needles, number 11. And so for, I don't know how people like back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, like before we could just make photocopies and, color on them, like how they would capture like mentally all that information and do it correctly according to this. That would seem really, really challenging to me. And so one of the things that I had to figure out while I was doing this was like how to accurately capture all of this information here and put it into this chart to make it more, I guess, more redundant, so that it was easier for the knitter to figure out just by looking at the chart rather than having to like cross-reference, all the time. Because I'm finding, and I've been told that like a lot of, it's the Book of Knitting Patterns by Mary Thomas, 43. I thought it was in the 20s. I was totally wrong. So 1943, and Bellamy published this 9 years later. So they were contemporaries. Mary Thomas was a big influence on Bellamy. Okay. So I was trying to figure out a way to capture all of this information and present it in a way that that modern knitters are used to. Because this whole book, this didn't start out as a book. It started out as a correspondence course. Like she originally had some patterns printed in like Women's Home Companion and like Arts and Crafts magazine or something. There was a few patterns that she had published that kind of like went viral, as much as there could be such a thing back in the 40s. And so then and I don't know if they published her home address, because if you read in the forward, and I have a whole video on my channel where I just read the forward to the book, and I apologize, it's a little dry because it's me reading and I'm not a voice actor. But she talks in the forward about how like she was getting letters from knitters all over the world, like asking for her help. And so she started this correspondence course, and so it went through like a series of courses. Then those courses eventually turned into this book. And so the courses are, first is what is number knitting. Second, tools and materials for knitting. So this would be like sort of like the intro part of probably any knitting book. 3, how to knit. 4 is how to number knit. And so specifically like the things that she does that are maybe a little bit different or a little particular. And then she goes into, she's got seven shapes that all of the designs in the book are based off of. And at the very end, she's got something called adapted units, but she has you make each one of these shapes as a project. Like the number 1, it's a square, and it's teaching you, how to knit a square. And then there is something called square scarf. And so by making a little, like a little test swatch, and then you figured out how to knit a square, and then you get to then make the project out of the same shape. And so she does that for 7 times. And then she goes into number knitting flat design, which is just like shawls and blankets and things. Let me see, where was I? There we go. Then she has a section called rules, symbols, and abbreviations. The hierarchy is a little wonky. And then she starts number knitting on squares. So like, if you have 6, items all together, you can make let's see if I got it here. Somewhere you can make like a placemat. And then she's got designs on rectangles, like you can make scarves, and you can make, more blankets. And so she takes you through a series. It's like a progressive series of like, complexity as far as the projects that you can make and the skills required. But here's the tricky part. If she's told you something on like page 50, and that same information is required on like page 150, she doesn't mention it again. So It's just like, because if you're a correspondence student, you would have already covered that and already locked it in, right? But because this is a correspondence book or a correspondence course, it's progressive. And so this is 74 patterns with in 274 pages. And so like, I used to be able to do that math when I was like 9. Let's see. What's 74 274 divided by 74 patterns. That's 3.7 pages per pattern. But a lot of, probably the first 50 pages of it is like introductory stuff and how to knit. And so if we did like, 274 minus 50, which is 224, and then divide that by 74 patterns, that's like 3 pages per pattern. So like if you look at any modern knitting pattern, like I recently put out a shawl pattern. I'll show it to you. It's based on number knitting, of course, because that's what I do. I love knitting. And so it's a triangle, right? And it's got these, interesting stripes and different shapes, and it's fun because you can make it big, you can make it small, you can use scrappy yarn. It's called the Tarzetto shawl, and it's available in Ravelry and Etsy and the KnitSwag website. But anyway, so this is just one shawl, and it's greatly, I've compressed the information a lot, and it's like 6 pages. And some of the sweater patterns I've tried to take from this book that are like 3 pages in the book, once I've run them through testing and gotten feedback, they grow to like 9 pages. And so because modern knitters, they want to, and maybe old time knitters were like this too, but they'll like go through Ravelry or whatever and like choose a pattern, like, oh, that's great, like I want to knit that. But there's like, you either have to, the knitter has to have some sort of like underlying knowledge of how to do a lot of the stuff. Like if you got a Fair Isle pattern and you were a brand new knitter and didn't know what Fair Isle was, like, should the pattern explain that? I don't know. Like if you didn't know what garter stitch was and you're, knitting for the first time, like does the pattern need to explain what garter stitch is? And so Bellamy didn't like duplicate all that information. She just presented it once. But modern knitters, they like to have that. They like to have all of the information and like the hand holding and all of that. And so each one of these patterns, once I format it, like I expand it for knitters in a way that I think is, helpful, and then I run it through testing, it at least triples or quadruples in size. And so these 74 patterns, if it originally took 250 pages, would now take like 1,000 pages. So anyway, that's another reason this has been taking so dang long. But I still love it. I cast on a new sweater last week, and I'm excited to try it every time I cast on a new pattern. And I've been knitting things from this book for like 10 years now. I learned something new. So anyway, I would like to hear from you all, because I feel like this is like, it's like a crowdsourced project, because the ladies, and sometimes men, but usually it's ladies that do testing for me and give me feedback. They give me really valuable feedback, but I feel like I need some, like, what do you guys want to see next? Like for knitters, because this is obviously not something I can do by myself. This is so much work. I originally thought I could knit them all by myself and then do like all the styling and all the photography and all the everything. And that's obviously not happening. So I'm going to need help to like really get this going. So I would like to know what you all would like to see next. Do you want me to do like instructional tutorials, like walking through the book with the different shapes? I know that's pretty basic, like how to knit a square, but I made a video on how to knit squares and it got a lot of views. I have done some videos about different cast on methods and the different rules of number knitting, and I'll link to that also once I figure out how. But I do have some videos on the different rules of number knitting, but I would like very much to hear what you knitters would like to see as far as what patterns to do, or if you'd like to see any of the items from this book, because I have knit probably at least half of the items in the book, and they're all sitting next to me. Like, do you want to see anything in particular? I've got sweaters, I've got shawls, I've got placemats, I've got blankets, I've got so many things. And I would like to know what you would like to see. So I'll just start showing you some things that I've done. Oh, hey, Karen. What 3 patterns of Bellamy's would you develop to a kit? A kit? Huh. Well, I think this one, let me find it. I think this one could be interesting as a kit. Might be a lot of work. This is not a good example, but because I've seen some kits where it's like you need 6 balls of one color of yarn. I'm like, well, okay, like I don't know if I need a kit for that, but like this could be a good kit if you need like small amounts of a bunch of different colors. This is the pattern. This is called Lambs and Butterflies. It was the pattern on the patent application. It's got lambs and it's got butterflies. And there's a whole bunch of, probably can't hear me behind the blanket. It's got lambs and these little butterflies. And there's a whole bunch of different bits of yarn that you'd need, which is, this is all, I think this is like Tosh Merino light. And Jimmy Bean's wool used to sell like, I don't know, 5 gram ball or something. And so I got like 30 different colors to make all these butterflies. But this one is interesting because it uses mitered squares, but it does it concentrically. And I think I have a whole video on mitered squares knitted concentrically, which to this day I've never seen anyone else do. She's the only one I've ever seen do it. Like as a designer. I mean, I've done it because I copy her patterns or I've knit them. But this could be an interesting one because it uses a lot of colors of different, a lot of little bits of colors. I think another one that would be a good kit is the something like this. I have not knit this one yet. This is called Tropical Leaf Car Throw, and it uses 3 different colors. I think it's 3. Yeah, is 3 different colors, and I think that would be really interesting as a kit. And I love this. They actually have a lady in a car with the blanket on her lap, because I think back then they didn't have heated seats. Yeah, so driving in the wintertime was probably really really quite chilly. Let's see what else could be a good kit. Oh, these could be a good kit. These were they're called Small Butterfly Shawl, and it's the same interior shape, but it's knit with like 3 different ways. And of course, sometimes I like go big or go home. And so I purposely increased the size by like 15 to 20%. And then I put it on. I was like, well, that was lame. I should have left it the size she said, because that was too big. But anyway, so it's the same interior shape. I guess the same exterior shape, but it's the way that the units are knitted is different. And she suggested that you get your graph paper and you draw out your shape, your exterior shape, and then you fill it in with however you want to do your modular shapes, which is interesting. So this could be a really interesting kit, kit for one or all 3. And obviously, you could make this more interesting by doing like stripes, or that would make it really. I've seen modern knitters take some of her patterns and do interesting striping with them, which really, I think, adds up the awesomeness of them. But for kind of like the sake of wanting to keep true to what she originally envisioned, I've been trying to just copy what she specified in the book. So those are the 3 that I would probably put into a kit. Are there any other things from the book that you'd like to see, like sweaters or a stole? I saw another knitting designer recently come out with a stole. I don't know if she came up with the idea herself or if she like figured out this from Bellamy's book or what, but it was interesting because normally if you have a rectangle stole, it's like knit from the center out. That's how I would think it would be done. But this is called Whirlpool stole. And what's interesting about it is that you knit, I think you start here and you knit the bright green part first, and then you add the medium green, and then you add the dark green, and then you do the same thing on the other side and you join it in the center, which is really interesting. And I saw someone else do something very similar, but they used different colors, and it wasn't all garter stitch. It was a mixture of lace and stockinette and things. It was stunning, but I was like, that looks a lot like Whirlpool stole from Number Knitting. Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how to move forward. So the more that y'all can like give me ideas, that helps me so much. The one I'm working on. Karen, good question. What 3 patterns of Bellamy's are a disaster? Oh, let me show you. Yeah, so where is it? Oh, yes. Seamless cocktail coat or Nancy jacket named for Mrs. Homer Reed. I don't know if I've done any research yet on Mrs. Homer Reed to see who she is. Because Bellamy, a lot of times what she would do in her book is she would intersperse like little stories about like, friends that she met or that knitted the items or whatever. And there's, like all her test knitters, their names are all in here. So you can like read up on them and see like where they lived and what they did for work and like how many kids they had. So anyway, this one was a hot mess the first time I did it. So all of her other sweaters are like, basically a bunch of mitered squares and triangles, and you kind of like build on each other. Not this one. It's basically like a chevron. Let's see where the cast on is. Yeah. So this is the cast on, right? And so the first time I made this, I spent weeks on it before I figured out my mistake. I was doing a chevron, like a blanket, right? Only if you're making a chevron blanket, the number of decreases that you have equals the number of increases. So it's straight up and down. Not so here. You've got 1, 2, 3 decrease points, and you've got 2 increase points. And so the number of stitches decreases as you go up. And I knit a full sweater, almost a full sweater before I figured that out. Okay. Another thing about this that is really, really challenging is that for the needles, she says average number 11. But then in another section, and she doesn't specify like for the whole sweater or the whole body or what. In another section, in the sleeves, she uses like 3 different sizes of needles, but she doesn't specifically say which size of needles for the body. So I used the wrong size needles. I assumed it was the larger size. So I'm not a big person. I'm like 5'4", and no joke, this sweater was like a 3X. It was ginormous. But also in this particular pattern, it says, let's see, she often has instructions, here, to wear as a waistcoat or with sleeves. Oh, here it is. Under the caption, it says the cocktail coat fitting a tiny model, full stretch to several sizes larger. Like it's so subtle. You could easily miss that. And I did ran this through test knitting, and it was a disaster, not just for me, but for everybody. It was like one lady used 11 skeins of yarn. And she's like, I have to buy more yarn. Like, oh my gosh. I made a sweater. Yeah, so I cast on, and I'm doing it totally different this time with like smaller needles. And so I would not recommend this one for a beginner. This was like, I'm hoping take 2 will be better, but my first take, I was so discouraged. I just ripped the whole thing out because it was a mess. Okay, here's another one that I would not recommend for beginners. It's called Bare Shoulder Waistcoat. And it took me a while to figure out what a waistcoat is, because, I'm not from 1950, and like people just don't, unless you're like watching a historical fashion YouTube channel, people don't use that word in like everyday conversation. And you wouldn't know what the heck it is by looking at this itty bitty little picture, because she's slouched over and she's got this big cape on her shoulders. So I made the waistcoat. All right, I have on a tank top underneath. That's just so we're clear. All right. Where's the waistcoat? It's got buttons. I think it's got buttons. Yeah, there they are. All right. So I made this. I made it with tinsel yarn, like she specified. Mine is turquoise instead of beige. So I made this, and it took me like 4 years to figure out that I was wearing it wrong. Of course, I only put it on for a picture, but it took me 4 years to figure out that like I was buttoning it wrong, because I think there's 3 buttons. I can't really tell, and the way the model is positioned, you can't tell either. So for a long time, I thought it was like this. And it obviously is not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be like out to the side, and I think maybe another button right there. But like the shape is just weird. And it's just the photo isn't helpful. So I wouldn't recommend doing that one either, because it was a frustrating experience. So I need a third one that I consider to be a disaster. Let's see. Oh. This is a good one. Yep. All right, let me put this one on. So this one doesn't fit. I followed the instructions. I maybe should have used a slightly heavier weight yarn, but let me show you what it looked like in the original book. This is called Evening Blouse. Evening Blouse. All the ladies' sweaters are in the back. Let's see. Borders. Hampton shirt. Well, let me just say that oh, there it is. This evening blouse is photographed flat. Notice there's no model wearing this. This is just flat. Yeah, so I made this, and then I put it on. And check out the neckline. Like if I wasn't wearing a tank top underneath this, oh my gosh, racy. And for me, it's too big. It's just, it doesn't, this is there's nothing that works about this. Incidentally, I found a knitter on Instagram who is, she's got a bigger build than I do, and she's got really big boobs. And she does really good photo styling. I mailed this to her and had her take pictures wearing it. It looked really awesome. What she did was she put it on, she had it on like a, when she had it with the hole in the front, she didn't have, she obviously had something underneath, but what she did is she put it on backwards and then so you can see like, if I didn't have a shirt on underneath and you could just see like the back line, like that looks hot. But like for me with this, it was a disaster. So what I did, I made another one because I was convinced I could make it work. So then I made another one. I adjusted the chart. If you look at this chart, it's pretty boxy. And so what I did, these are divided squares. And so what I did is I just, took about 20% off of those. And so I compressed the whole thing so that it fit me better. And I also adjusted the neckline so that it didn't go down to my navel, because I'm not scandalous. And then next time it did fit better. I'm not so sure about it. I don't know. I'm just not sure. So I think it would be a frustrating experience for someone else. I've been knitting a long time and it was frustrating for me. But that's one of the great things about Bellamy's book is that it's, people say, oh, garter stitch is boring, but like I've been knitting for a really long time. And sure, it's, garter stitch is the kind of thing you can go on autopilot. But like the things that she does with it, I've never seen anyone else do, like the gauge shifting and like all the different kinds of modular shapes. And it's just like, it's really intentional, which I love. There's some certain point, I won't say any names, that's like, very popular, just like wild things. But a lot of the designs don't look like they are intentional. They look random and like they're, noodling around, which, if you're into that sort of thing, that's great. And I know yarn shops love it because it uses a ton of yarn, the giant shawls. But like Bellamy's stuff is always very intentional, and with the way she's charted it out and the descriptions, even though they're very brief, I think she went to great lengths to reduce the amount of words that she used and to make everything really concise. But everything she does is so intentional. There's like nothing random about it. You can tell she put a great deal of care and thought into these things, even like, indicating like on certain, like there's this little itty bitty gusset there that uses a different needle size than like the surrounding things. And it was really thoughtful. And I love that about her stuff. So it's really challenging as a very experienced knitter. It's very, very challenging to me. And, but I can still do it when I'm tired, which is every day. So I like that I can do it like kind of in the dark when I'm tired. And I can still make progress on a project and like carry on an intelligent conversation. Yeah. So did you want to see any other sweaters or patterns or whatever? My plan is to do this every week just so that I can get comfortable with the camera. So every night at 6, every Sunday night at 6, be there or be square. Yeah. So maybe next week I'll have some more progress done on my current Nancy jacket named for Mrs. Homer Reed, so I can bring that to show you. As far as the book, this is available on Etsy, in my Etsy shop, and also in my KnitSwag shop. What I have been doing is, because this has taken a lot of time, piracy in the knitting world is a big deal. And so what I've done, like if somebody buys this, I have it, yes, we'll do a knit along. We'll do Tarzetto. I just released that pattern. You're the first to hear about it because I didn't tell anyone on Instagram. It's for sale. Yeah, so we'll do Tarzetto next. I just came up with a hat idea for that also. So there's a shawl, and coming soon there will be a hat, but I haven't worked out all the kinks in that yet. Haven't even cast on yet. So for the book, what I've been doing is I have the whole thing available for download, and I just, if someone buys it, I just put like in like the bottom footer, I put their name and email address and the date that they purchased it as like a watermark, just like really unobtrusive down here. And then I password protect it, just so like if it ever does get out in the wild, like I'm pretty sure that someone wouldn't want their public name and email address like on a secure PDF. Like then everyone would know who gave it away. Yeah, so the book is available on Etsy and my KnitSwag shop. It's I have it priced at $74.99. I think I saw one on Amazon recently. Usually they're like between $300 and $600. I saw one on Amazon. I think it was like $1,000 or something ridiculous. Anyway, so this is $74.99 and it's like keywordable. Oh, and Karen says a Bellamy knit along to help with the patterns. That's, yes, I agree. I jumped to my own pattern because that's what I have on the brain right now. So for knit along, what are you guys thinking? Do you want to do like a blanket or like a shawl? What are you feeling like? I haven't done this one yet. This is called Abstract Rose. And this one is interesting because you can either make it with mitered edges, bias edges, or straight edges. Like this is the straight edge version. But she also has the thing on a bias as well, which, you know, I haven't done either one. But yeah, so with what I've been doing with my testers is if somebody completes a test with me, even if they're not like an official test, if they just like knit one of the patterns from the book and like send me a picture and like put it in their Ravelry, you know, projects, I'll give them a 50% off coupon code. So I'm thinking we should, You're puzzled, Karen. That's what I've been doing. And so far I've had like 3 people take me up on it. So, oh, Abstract Rose, how many colors? This says 3 colors. It's 2 pounds. You need dusky pink, 1 ounce, dove blue, 2 ounces. Oh, there's 4. Blue green, 4 ounces, and dusky rose, 25 ounces. So it's 4 colors. 3 of them, 2 are pink and 1 green and 1 blue. Yeah. So like I know that I want this to be published, and I know that people like a lot of knitters only use free patterns, and like if you don't have any money, I get that. Like $6 is not much for a pattern, but like I also like if someone was like a really smart, dedicated knitter and they just don't have a $75. Well, I get that because I've been there. And I still want those people to have a way to get this, you know, this awesome book in their hands. And so if they're willing to invest, you know, dozens and dozens of hours in knitting some of these things from the book and sending me pictures, yes, that's in the coupon code. Now I won't give it away for free just because, you know, like people write nasty grams on social media, which has only happened once actually. And it wasn't to me, it was just about me, whatever. But I you know, I do, because this has taken me a lot of time and a fair amount of money. I want, you know, if anyone's going to get it, I want them to have invested either $75 or like, you know, their time and their mental effort to get the book, because it's not cheap. it wasn't cheap in any way. And I want people to value it. And I think test knitting or money is, they're both valid ways of valuing the work. DJ says maybe a fade set for the rose. Well, it's 25 ounces of dusky rose and 1 ounce of dusky pink. I don't have the colored chart in front of me. According to this, it's not much dusky pink. It's mostly that rose color. But we could, do different colors. It doesn't all have to be dusky, whatever that is. But yeah, we could do something that we could maybe do a kit. For those of you in the chat, my friend DJ from Discovery of Stitches, she does great dyeing. She does, she dyes yarn, soft yarn, worsted weight yarn. This is like a sparkle. Does it have sparkle? No, that one doesn't. This is like a sparkle fade, sort of a yarn. DJ also made this cool bag. This is my snowflake pattern from KnitSwag, printed on fabric. So the blanket, this is one I'm thinking about. But if you're new to number knitting, I think another really good choice would be Hoyle's Garden Stair, which is, let me find that one. Oh, there's also Tropical Leaf Car Throw. There is what she calls Rainbow Afghan. This might be cool for a fade set. It's just like a little baby blanket. It's knitted. I don't know, it's not super exciting. It's just, little chevron, but it's different than most chevrons in that you're not knitting like this. You're knitting back and forth, one color at a time. So that's kind of interesting. I haven't done that one yet, but I'm planning to use some minis for that. Oh, there it is. Hoyle's Garden Stair. And this one is neat because it's done on, because usually blankets are made from like the bottom up, right? This one is done corner to corner. So you knit with one color for a while, and then you switch to this color and knit that for a while, and then you switch back to the first color and then wrap it up with the second color again. I've knit that one before, but I gave it away once when I was sad. Somebody needed a baby blanket. Yeah, so I gave away my sample, but that could be a fun one too. Yeah, there's probably more Afghans in here, but that's kind of the ones that I was thinking of off the top of my head. And of course there's Lambs and Butterflies, which is, it's kind of a big endeavor. It's not making mitered squares. That's a lot of work, but it's fun. Yeah. So, maybe I'll put a poll if I can figure out how to put a poll on the, maybe I could do like which blanket pattern. I'm thinking, if we could do maybe vote for one, give it a thumbs up or something, and whichever one gets the most, we'll start working toward a knit along. So there's Hoyle's. Hey, Bob. Oh, welcome. It's lots of fun. You will love it. Okay, so we've got Hoyle's Garden Stair, we've got Abstract Rose, and then there was one other I was thinking about. Oh, Tropical Leaf Car Throw. So those are the three that we'll choose. So maybe, we'll give it about a week or so and let people, give a thumbs up to one of those, and whichever one gets the most thumbs up is the one that we'll do for a knit along. Yeah. Well, this has been super fun. Thanks for joining me. I honestly only thought like 2 people would show up, but we have 5. It's gonna go viral. This is way more fun than just me talking to the camera without any feedback. This is way better. So I think now that I have a method, we can start to make progress on this, because it's been way too long in the works. So far, we've got 2 votes for Tropical Leaf Car Throw and no votes for the other ones. So, well, that's cool, because I haven't knit that one either, and I'm excited about it. I think it would be really fun. Oh, Karen wants to do Hoyle's Garden Stair. Oh, yes, that's what she says. Well, we can always do all of them. I think it'd be fun after I get my Hoyle's Garden Stair or the Tropical Leaf Car Throw done, if I could then find an old classic car with no headrest and like a giant, school bus size steering wheel, and pose in it with my car throw. Karen says we could also each do our own and report back to the others. I would love that. That would be so great, because the feedback I'm getting from my test knitters has just been really, really spectacular. It's been super helpful, and they come up with ideas that I wouldn't have come up with. Like, there's this one lady, I think like Germany. Her name is Annette. Anyway, she's a I think she does drafting. She used to do drafting for a living, and so she knows how to draw all these amazing charts and like all this coloring, and like she does stuff with her coloring that I never would conceive of. It's amazing to see what other knitters, like how they choose to use their yarns. It's awesome. So yes, I would very much like to do our own and report back to the others. And if you guys are comfortable, or if you're willing to be uncomfortable with me, then we could like do a 2-part, and you could show off your project. Because undoubtedly it's going to be different than mine. So I would like to do that. Anyhow, I think that's it for me today now. And I'm going to just keep knitting this week and report back. The project I cast on this week is lace weight yarn on number 1 needles. And the cast on row was like 470 stitches. So it's a little slow, but I'm making good progress. So I will show you all that next week. Yeah. Thanks a lot, folks. I think I'm not used to talking this much, as I work from home by myself. And so I don't use very many words during the day. And so after an hour of talking, my voice gets hoarse. So this is going to be good practice for me in learning, like exercising my vocal cords more than they're used to. This was really fun. I'm so glad that you all came. I just figured out who ACR Protect is. Thanks, Andrew, for joining us. I appreciate you all. All right. Happy New Year. You guys have a great week, and we will see you next week. All right. Bye, friends.